A
They are the
powerful
largest
bite
sea
and a
lions in the
violent
world,
thrash.
tipping
The
the
fight
scales
is
at
over
over
in
a ton.
seconds.
Yet, somehow, these massive animals can move with incredible
The
speed
secret
and
lies
grace
in the Steller
underwater.
sea lion's unique
Get ready
anatomy.
to dive deep into the
A
fascinating
biological
world of the
marvel.
Steller sea lion.
The Steller sea
You're
lion
watching
is a
Connect
being
with
of
Animal.
immense power, but also of surprising grace.
We often think of the lion as the ultimate symbol of weight and power in the animal kingdom.
But in the frigid northern oceans, another lion exists. One that dwarfs its terrestrial namesake. This is the Steller sea lion, a 1-ton giant weighing 4 times more than an African lion. With such immense bulk, one would assume the Steller sea lion is slow and cumbersome. That assumption would be dangerously wrong. This giant moves with unbelievable speed.
In the water, the Steller sea lion can reach speeds of up to 35 kilometers per hour.
This combination of mass and velocity makes the Steller sea lion an apex predator.
The Steller sea lion's diet is varied, but its hunting method is always brutally efficient.
But sometimes, the Steller sea lion targets prey far more formidable than fish.
Consider this incredible case: a 1-ton sea lion versus a notorious ocean predator.
A young shark, itself a capable hunter, enters the Steller sea lion's territory.
The 1-ton giant has spotted its target. The hunt begins with silent observation. In this moment, calculations are made. Distance, speed, and angle of attack.
The shark has no idea it is no longer the hunter, but the hunted.
All the power of the Steller sea lion's 1-ton frame is about to be unleashed.
The attack is a blur of fury. There is no warning, no chance to escape. From the shark's perspective, it is an inescapable, monstrous apparition.
The initial strike is designed to stun and incapacitate, a pure display of brute force.
A powerful bite and a violent thrash. The fight is over in seconds.
The entire lethal encounter, from launch to kill, takes less than 5 seconds.
A stunning demonstration of speed and power. How is this physically possible?
The secret lies in the Steller sea lion's unique anatomy, a biological marvel.
Its chest and shoulders are a powerhouse, generating immense forward thrust with every stroke.
A super-developed core allows the Steller sea lion to flex its entire body for propulsion.
These massive foreflippers act as powerful wings, allowing the Steller sea lion to fly through water.
Every part of the Steller sea lion's body is optimized for life in the ocean.
Even its thick layer of blubber serves a purpose beyond warmth. It creates a perfect hydrodynamic shape.
On land, the Steller sea lion's weight is a burden, limiting its movement.
But in the water, that same weight becomes a weapon, an engine of power. This power isn't just for hunting. It defines the Steller sea lion's entire life. Young Steller sea lions hone their skills through play, building the muscle they will need to survive.
They are not just powerful hunters, but also intelligent and social animals with strong family bonds.
Their curiosity is a sign of high intelligence, allowing them to adapt and thrive in harsh environments.
The Steller sea lion is a master of its domain, an integral part of the coastal ecosystem. A 1-ton body, perfectly engineered for a life of speed and dominance beneath the waves.
The stellar sea lion's physique is a testament to evolutionary perfection.
A living paradox, a creature of immense weight, yet capable of flight.
The Steller sea lion challenges our perception of what it means to be big. Proving that in the natural world, being fat or massive is not a weakness.
It is a source of incredible, explosive speed. Fat never means slow.
The Steller sea lion's body is a masterpiece of hydrodynamic engineering, sculpted by millennia of evolution.
In repose, the Steller sea lion conserves energy, a sleeping giant waiting for the call to action.
For its prey, the Steller sea lion's speed is a terrifying, inescapable force of nature.
The Steller sea lion's power allows it to hunt at all depths, a versatile and deadly predator. From a young age, Steller sea lions begin to master the aquatic skills essential for survival. The Steller sea lion's size is a key factor in its social hierarchy and reproductive success.
The Steller sea lion's teeth are not for chewing, but for ensuring that once caught, prey never escapes.
The Steller sea lion's feeding technique is efficient, minimizing time spent vulnerable at the surface. Even in darkness, the Steller sea lion can hunt, using its whiskers to feel vibrations of hidden prey.
The roar of a bull Steller sea lion is a declaration of power, a warning to all rivals.
Battles between male Steller sea lions are brutal contests where size and power determine the victor.
The Steller sea lion displays a surprising playfulness, mastering the very waves that shape its world.
These remote rookeries are vital for the Steller sea lion's survival, bustling with the next generation.
As a keystone species, the health of the Steller sea lion population reflects the health of the entire ocean.
Encounters with Steller sea lions offer a humbling reminder of the power and scale of marine life.
Even at rest, the Steller sea lion is perfectly adapted to its aquatic home.
Beyond the brute force and hunting prowess, lies a creature of surprising complexity and personality.
For the Steller sea lion, there is strength not only in muscle, but also in community. The Steller sea lion is a living engine, a perfect fusion of form and function. In this harsh and beautiful world, the Steller sea lion is not just a resident, it is a king.
The Steller sea lion's strength is not confined to the water. It is absolute.
The Steller sea lion combines brute force with a surprising, delicate agility when needed.
The Steller sea lion is always aware of its surroundings, a patient and calculating apex predator.
Even this one-ton giant knows its place in the food chain and respects greater powers. The Steller sea lion is not intimidated by the ocean's fury. It is a part of it.
A dense, oily coat of fur provides the Steller sea lion with essential insulation against the cold.
To look into the eyes of a Steller sea lion is to see ancient wisdom and wild intelligence.
The life of a Steller sea lion is governed by the ancient pulse of the ocean.
The Steller sea lion is a being of immense power, but also of surprising grace. We saw how the Steller sea lion's mass becomes a devastating weapon. And we saw how that same mass, when streamlined, creates incredible speed.
Mr. Beck Grumolf.
Society often sees a large body as a sign of slowness or weakness.
But the Steller sea lion proves that in the right environment, mass is power.
The Steller sea lion carries its weight not as a burden, but as its greatest asset.
It is a 1-ton titan that moves with the speed of a hunting torpedo. The Steller sea lion is the ultimate proof that in the wild,
being massive is the furthest thing from being slow. It is the very source of speed.
The Steller sea lion, a 1-ton king who proves that fat never, ever means slow.